Hi, I'm Bradley McClenigan, and I'm a pastor at Union Church in Hinsdale, in suburban Chicago, and one of the editors of When Kids Ask Hard Questions, faith-filled responses for tough topics. If you happen to catch Union Church's 9:07 service for Pentecost Sunday, which you can find on the Union Church YouTube channel, you'll get to see my youngest daughter and I releasing 4 painted lady butterflies into our backyard wildflower garden. It's a terrible angle for me, but Hats is adorable, and the last of the 4 butterflies lingers on her outstretched finger in a moment of wonder and delight for us. What the video doesn't show is that we received 5 caterpillars in our jar from Insect Lore, watched 5 caterpillars grow and crawl around until they settled at the top of the habitat to form chrysalides. 5 butterflies emerged a few days later and flew around the netted area, perching on the orange slices and sponge of water we'd carefully placed inside. The instructions told us to wait a few days to enjoy them before releasing, and so we intended to, but on the second day, it became clear that one had died. I took it out and laid it on the table gently, and Hattie, who is 5, asked why it had died. "I'm not sure," I told her. "Maybe it was injured. Maybe something went wrong when it was transforming into a butterfly. One of its wings doesn't look fully formed. Maybe it drank too much juice from the orange," she wondered. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I killed it." "Oh?" I reached in and wanted to touch them. I was gentle, but maybe not enough. Maybe I killed it. "Maybe," I said. She was sad and I was sad, but this is not the saddest thing these days. Still, I was moved that she was willing to consider the possibility that she was responsible, or at least had maybe played a part in the butterfly's untimely death. I've been struggling this week and in recent weeks, as maybe you have been too, as we hear of the deaths of Breonna Taylor, a young black woman in Louisville, an EMT shot to death in her apartment by a police officer, and of George Floyd, a black man in Minneapolis killed by a police officer in the bright light of day on a city street, as we have watched protests and fires and violence erupt. I know a lot of clergy and others on the streets in both cities, and protesting here in Chicago too, I will tell you. I know they love their communities, and I know they love God and they love justice. I am afraid for them, but also know that they are lifting up their voices and praying with their feet, because it is not right that white violence and white power and white supremacy should exist at all, much less work so much harm on Black Americans. I have been struggling, as perhaps you have, to know what I can do to dismantle white supremacist structures, to call out institutional racism in all its forms. And as a parent and a pastor, how to make sure that the sins of whiteness are not passed on to our children. I want them to do better. I want to do better for them. Hattie's willingness to name her sadness and the possibility of her complicity moved me and is making me brave today. White people and white Christians who profess a faith in a God of all people, a God who loves justice especially, have work to do. Sure, none of us, I hope, would ever act in explicitly racist ways or engage in racist or other violence. I hope. But we may not know how to move from attempting to be generally not intentionally racist to being anti-racist, to being effective in our work of shutting down racism. We may not be comfortable with concepts like complicity or white privilege. Now, there are a lot of great resources to help people, white people, do this work. There is plenty to read. But I wanted to offer a few resources for those wanting to do this work, in particular with children. First is the wonderful book, Raising White Kids by Jennifer Harvey. Pick that up. It is good. The next is When Kids Ask Hard Questions, which, yes, I worked on, but I'm also incredibly proud of. Several of the sections of the book and a number of essays look at questions of race and white supremacy, beginning with questions like, what am I afraid of? What's going on? And what's fair? Each chapter begins with personal reflection and experience. It provides tools for crafting conversations around these questions and world events, and a list of resources for both parents and kids. One of the books we consistently recommend is Not My Idea, a book about whiteness. Another is Something Happened in My Town, which you can watch in a linked video, read aloud by folks from the Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center. Both books, and When Kids Ask, are predicated on the idea that kids know what's up. They know when we're upset. They catch on to things that don't seem right. They are really good at knowing when we're lying. We don't have to bring things up often enough. We just have to create the kinds of cultures in our families in which they know that they can ask questions and engage in conversation. There are days when I want to shield my kids from the world, when I wish they could stay in a bubble forever. But that's not what my faith tells me makes for a good life. That's not how we work with God to make a more just world. And so it's well worth figuring out how to talk about hard things with our kids, even when we're not always sure where to start. When Hattie confessed her fears of culpability in that butterfly's death, I couldn't have been more proud. She was sad and felt badly and learned something. She set it aside for now, worked through it sufficiently. But I hope she remembers the feeling of naming something going wrong and wondering what might have happened and what might have gone differently. I hope she remembers the desire to do things differently next time. I hope we all feel that same desire to do things differently now.